Good evening, one and all. We welcome you all to the international webinar series on holistic health, well-being, and sustainable development 2022-23, commemorating Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, nation celebrating 76 years of independence, United Nations Sustainable Development Goals 2015 to 2030 as part of awareness and campaigns, and also commemorating India's G20 presidency in collaboration with Sri Holistic Health Foundation India and Sri Research Institute Center for Art, Sciences and Well. Before we start our sessions, let's take the blessings of Almighty.
कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शत्रुबुद्धिविनाशाय दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तुते दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तुते शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः
With the blessings of Almighty, we shall continue with today's sessions and commemorations. Today, we are commemorating International Mountain Day. Every year, 11th December is celebrated and commemorated as International Mountain Day. This year, 2023, the theme for the International Mountain Day is restoring mountain ecosystems. Of the 20 plant species that supply 80% of the world's food, 6 originated and have been diversified in mountains, like maize, potatoes, barley, sorghum, tomatoes, and apples. Mountain ecosystems are under threat from pollution. Microplastics have been found as high as the summit of Mount Everest. Up to 84% of endemic mountain species are at risk of extinction, according to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC. So mountains are natural jewels we should treasure. They are home to 15% of the world's population and host about half of the world's biodiversity hotspots. They provide fresh water for everyday life to half of humanity, helping to sustain agriculture and supply clean energy and medicines. Unfortunately, mountains are under threat from climate change, overexploitation, and contamination, increasing the risk for the people and the planet. As the global change continues to warm, mountain glaciers melt, affecting freshwater supplies downstream and mountain people. Some of the world's poorest face even greater struggles to survive. Steep slopes mean the clearing of forests for farming, settlements, or infrastructure can cause soil erosion as well as the loss of habitat. Erosion and pollution harm the quality of water flowing downstream and the productivity of the soil. In fact, over 311 million rural mountain people in developing countries live in areas exposed to progressive land degradation, 178 million of whom are considered vulnerable to food insecurity. This problem affects us all. We must reduce our carbon footprint and take care of these natural treasures. International Mountain Day 2023, under the title Restoring Mountain Ecosystems, is a chance to increase awareness about the relevance of mountain ecosystems and call for the nature-based solutions, best practices and investments that build resilience, reduce vulnerability, and increase the ability of mountains to adapt to daily threats and extreme climatic events. The UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration 2021 to 2030 is a 10-year effort to stop revert deterioration of nature. This plan is an opportunity to draw together political support, scientific research, and financial resources to significantly scale up and restoration and prevent further degradation of mountain ecosystems. Let's watch one short video.
Yo trabajo 8 años como arriero y bueno, lo que yo he notado en el cambio no es que cada año los nevados se van perdiendo, no se van retirando más, van disminuyendo. Eso es algo que no podemos recuperar, ¿no? Creo que de aquí 30, 40 años ya no va a haber nada. Más antes nosotros, o sea, mi abuelo me cuenta, ¿no? En estos valles que nosotros tenemos ahora, la gente criaba, se dedicaba más a la ganadería y la agricultura, pero ahora ya no vemos eso, ya no vemos muchos animales, porque ya los pastos, todo ya no es igual, ya los pastos se han revigido y por la lluvia también, ¿no? La lluvia ya entra muy tarde. Por eso ahora mi comunidad ha optado por criar limitado ya cada persona con 5 o 6 burritos y menos vacas, menos ovejas y bueno, adecuarnos a nuestra vida actual, ¿no?
Si usted se fija en este mapa, usted va a poder ver una delimitación roja, ¿no? Que básicamente nos muestra hasta dónde llegaba el sistema Huascarán. Este es el sistema Huascarán en el 62. En 54 años la Cordillera Blanca ha perdido un promedio de 38% de cobertura glaciar. A nivel del Perú tenemos una pérdida del 53%. Entonces estamos hablando de la mitad, mucho más de la mitad. Y seguimos con una tendencia agresiva de pérdida sobre estos recursos que todavía no sabemos cómo gestionarlos.
Los impactos directos, primeramente va a estar en el tema de la provisión de agua para consumo poblacional. Es claro, actualmente se nota claramente, sobre todo en la época seca, el déficit de agua para la dotación de agua para los cultivos, es decir, para la agricultura, y obviamente también para la industria que genera la energía eléctrica, inclusive en algunos lugares un tema de conflictos con la población, o sea, quién tiene la prioridad en el tema del uso del agua y para qué.
Más adelante no sé qué va a ser de nuestra existencia, porque este es el fuente de vida para nosotros, lo que vivimos aquí en la sierra, ¿no? Sí, para la generación, no sé, va a ser un problema muy grande eso, es que este recurso se va a agotar.
We have seen how the Peru and the Andes living on the climate change front lines. The Andes, which runs through 7 countries in Latin America, plays a crucial part in providing water to over 95 million people. In Peru, communities question what the future will be like as glaciers diminish with each passing year. In this video, we climb the Peruvian Andes Mountains to record the impacts of climate change on the lives of those dealing with these daily challenges. Similar situation from various other places where glaciers are melting away and disappearing year by year, affecting not only mountaineers' life but also the availability of water. So aptly, the United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration 2021 to 2030, preventing, halting, and reversing loss of nature. We need to restore our ecosystem now for climate, nature, and people. This is our moment. There has been never more an urgent need to revive damaged ecosystems than now. Ecosystem supports all life on Earth. The healthier our ecosystems are, the healthier the planet and its people. The UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration aims to prevent, halt, and restore degradation of ecosystems on every continent and in every ocean. It can help to end poverty, combat climate change, and prevent a mass extinction. It will only succeed if everyone plays a part.
Stella Jean is a fashion designer with a difference. For years, she has been collaborating with groups of women, artisans from all over the world. Her collections bridge knowledge of Italian design with the cultural legacy and heritage of mountain women. For this mountain partnership project, Stella traveled to Tolconi, a village 4,800 meters above sea level in the Peruvian Andes. For millennia, alpacas have lived in the Puna ecosystem of the high Andes. At this altitude, agriculture is not possible. Animal grazing is the only economic activity for survival. In the Andes, women move mountains. Historically, alpaca husbandry and breeding has been practiced exclusively by women, called alpaqueras. Today, they still raise alpacas the traditional way, preserving the herd's natural color variations of black, gray, brown, and white. Women are also responsible for weaving fine textiles and for teaching the next generation. They are considered the ultimate authority on the designs, which relate to a community's history. In 2022, Stella Jean met with a local women's association, Iyari Threads for Dreams, to produce some items that will be launched on the global fashion market in 2023, as well as others that will be sold by the women online. The global alpaca market does not value the quality and varied colors of the alpaca fleece, following trends that prefer white fiber only. Due to the many intermediaries, the prices the women receive for the raw material are low. So to diversify their source of income while conserving alpaca diversity, the women now produce hand-knitted items using multicolored alpaca fiber. When the women realize that designs based on their local traditions can be appreciated across the world, they start looking at their culture with new eyes. Through this partnership, the Tolconi community is creating new models that are more attractive to international markets. Sharing ancestral knowledge and traditional techniques can drive mountain women's economic empowerment.
The Mountain Partnership envisions by 2030 a world with empowered mountain communities and increased public and private sector commitment and investment in sustainable mountain development to address the climate and biodiversity crisis in mountains and ensure social and economic livelihood and well-being of mountain people, leaving no one behind, as well as the conservation and sustainable use of mountain ecosystem and resources for the benefit of people and planet. The Mountain Partnership is a voluntary alliance of governments and organizations committed to working together with the common goal of achieving sustainable mountain development around the world by tapping with wealth and diversity of resources, knowledge, information, and expertise within its global membership. The Mountain Partnership engages in advocacy and stimulates concrete initiatives at all levels to address threats, improve quality of life, and sustain healthy environments in the world's mountain regions. International Mountain Day 2023 with focus on restoring ecosystems. COP28 FAO marks the International Mountain Day 2023 with focus on ecosystems. New report offers uplifting cases of successful restoration projects and the climate crisis. Dubai, United Arab Emirates, December 11, 2023, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, FAO, marked the International Mountain Day 2023 with a high-level meeting at UN Climate Conference, COP28, in Dubai, and the launch of report that offers recommendations and uplifting examples of successful mountain ecosystem restoration projects. International Mountain Day 2023 underscores the huge relevance of mountain ecosystems for the entire planet. This year's theme, Restoring Mountain Ecosystems, calls for the nature-positive solutions, best practices, and investments that build resilience of ecosystems and livelihoods, reduce vulnerability, and increase the ability of mountains and their people to adapt to daily threats and extreme climatic events. With mountains covering around 27% of the Earth's land surface, this year's celebration comes amid signs of the growing recognition of mountains in global discussions relating to the climate crisis. A forum on the role of mountains within the context of Nairobi Work Program was held on December 2nd December at COP28, while countries have now joined forces to push the Dubai conference to hold a political and technical dialogue on mountains and climate change during its plenary session for the first time. Meanwhile, the UN General Assembly has proclaimed 2023 to 2027 as a 5-year action for the development of mountain regions. Activities planned for the period are designated to enhance the international community awareness of issues affecting mountain countries and to drive effective change aimed at addressing their challenges. The high-level event at FAO Pavilion in Dubai was addressed by the Director General of FAO, Qiu Dongyu, who highlighted how healthy mountains can protect and help us adapt to the impacts of climate change. Today's event is an opportunity for COP28 to reflect on how we can turn the tide of the climate crisis by restoring mountain ecosystems. Qiu said, As we celebrate International Mountain Day, I urge all stakeholders from governments and NGOs to local communities and individuals to join hands in a renewed commitment to restoring our mountains and including mountain regions in the political agenda. Other speakers included Ambassador Nurulan Aitmazev, Karis Kyrgyzstan Special Envoy on Mountain Issues, Carl Mickwell, Andorra's Secretary of State of Energy Transition, Transportation and Mobility, Francisco Carvero, Italy's Special Envoy for Climate Change at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, and Bruno Pozzi, Deputy Director of the Ecosystems Division at the United Nations Environment Programme, UNEP. Some of the key messages highlighted during the event include the notion that resilient mountain ecosystems are key for adaptation to climate change. Since mountain, forest, and grasslands cool local temperatures, increasing water retention, provide a vital carbon store and reduce the risk of erosion and landslides. Host to about half of the world's biodiversity hotspots, as well as rare plants and animals such as snow leopards and mountain gorillas, healthy mountains are also crucial for the preservation of biodiversity. Finally, the event highlighted that mountain farmers and pastoralists play a crucial role in sustainable management of mountain ecosystems, and activities such as sustainable tourism can create jobs and increase awareness of the value of the natural environment. In line with the theme of this year's International Mountain Day, FAO and UNEP published a report called Restoring Mountain Ecosystems, which analyzes 10 mountain ecosystem restoration projects and recommends how the UN Decade's 10 principles for ecosystem restoration can be applied to the mountain ecosystems. The report underlines that mountain ecosystems and the millions of rural people who depend on them are under threat and particularly vulnerable to climate change, and spells out what needs to be done to preserve and restore mountain ecosystems through case studies from around the world. For example, restoration efforts in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Rwanda, and Uganda has increased mountain gorilla population, attracting tourists and generating revenue for local communities. In Kyrgyzstan, the Baibusum Micro Reserve, which covers 14,000 hectares of pastures and glaciers, was established to protect biodiversity and regulate activities like hunting and grazing. Former hunters and fishermen are now community rangers who patrol the protected area and manage camera traps to monitor wildlife, while local shepherds are using modern grazing techniques, enhancing vegetation and vitally in pasture lands. This shift has not only increased snow leopard and ibex populations, but also created new livelihoods. Such efforts are part of multi-country flagship initiative by the UNEP, the Mountain Partnership Secretariat at FAO, and Carpathian Convention to restore mountain ecosystem in Kazakhstan, Serbia, Rwanda, and Uganda. The UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration 2021 to 2030, led by the United Nations Environment Programme, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations and its partners, cover terrestrial as well as the coastal and marine ecosystems. As a global call to action, it will draw together political support and scientific research and financial muscle to massively scale up restoration. So, mountains are home to a variety of ecosystems that provide vital services directly to 1.1 billion people and billions of others living in connected lowland areas. Half of the humanity depends on mountains for the provision of fresh water alone. Mountain ecosystems cools local temperatures, increases water retention, provide carbon storage, and reduce the risk of soil erosion and landslides. Mountain forests, wetlands, and grasslands also host and support half the world's biodiversity hotspots. But the world's mountain ecosystems are under attack due to their particular sensitivity to the planetary crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, food insecurity, and pollution and waste. Evidence shows that mountain ecosystems are greatly the publication Restoring Mountain Ecosystems challenges case studies and recommendations for implementing the UN Decade Principles for Mountain Ecosystem Restoration, jointly developed by the Mountain Partnership Secretariat and the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations and the United Nations Environment Program, analyzes several mountain ecosystem restoration projects and recommends how the UN Decade's 10 principles of ecosystem restoration can be applied to the mountain ecosystem. Mountain restoration success stories from initiatives that have been selected or shortlisted aware of the critical need to halt, prevent, and reverse ecosystem degradation and to effectively restore degraded terrestrial, freshwater, and marine ecosystems across the globe through Resolution 73 by 284. The United Nations General Assembly declared 2021 to 2030 as the United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. Here are to support the implementation of the UN Decade and help achieve its goals. There is need for shared vision of ecosystem to support the implementation of the UN Decade and help achieve its goals. There is a need for shared vision of ecosystem restoration defined as a process of halting and reversing degradation, resulting in improved ecosystem services and recovered biodiversity. Ecosystem restoration encompasses a wide continuation of practices depending on local conditions and societal choice. A key step in creating a shared vision of ecosystem restoration to adapt principles that underpin the full set of ecosystem restoration activities in support of the UN Decade Strategy. Although principles of specific types of restorative activities, such as ecological restoration, The best practice principles detailed in essential tenets of ecosystem restoration that should be followed to maximize net gain for native biodiversity ecosystem, health and integrity, and human health and well-being across biome sectors and regions.
Of restoration, and collectively we consider them to be ecosystem restoration in alignment with the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. And the Society for Ecological Restoration and partners has developed a restorative continuum that describes those different kinds of restoration that's used to underpin the decade and helps describe restoration for Target 2 of the Global Biodiversity Framework. And those, the major categories are reduce societal impacts, remediation, rehabilitation, and ecological restoration. And they're important because different kinds of restoration produce different kinds of outcomes. So for example, if you're trying to restore ecosystem functions and services for people, improve food production, et cetera, then that kind of restoration is typically rehabilitation. If you're trying to get rid of contaminants, toxic materials that might be harmful to people and wildlife, it's remediation. But for Target 2, in particular relevance to biodiversity, ecological restoration is the kind of restoration that results in the recovery of natural or native ecosystems that are specifically referred to in Target 2. The idea of effective restoration is really important, and we're really glad that the word effective was included in Target 2. Because we can do restoration and it can do something or nothing or a lot. And the idea of effective restoration is we need the restoration that we're going to invest in and we're going to perform or do to be as effective as possible to produce the best outcomes that they can. So in that sense, effective restoration would adhere to generally accepted principles and standards for the profession of restoration. So we have standards for ecological restoration, and there are principles and standards that have been developed for the UN Decade on ecosystem restoration. And they include all kinds of components, from stakeholder engagement, using all kinds of knowledge, to specific attributes that deal with the kinds of species that we're trying to restore, or the ecosystem functions and so forth. So effective restoration, by definition, will provide the kind of improvements that in these key areas that are identified in Target 2, such as connectivity and biodiversity and ecosystem integrity. Those things are all included in the idea of effectiveness. The idea of a resource manual for Target 2 is really important. There's a lot of guidance that is out there about restoration. There's also a lack of clarity on some key issues, such as definitions of what degraded is, different kinds of restoration, and so forth. So the idea of the resource manual is to bring all of that information together in a concise format. Parties, countries, people that are doing restoration are not going to wade through a 500-page document. So we're going to try and get the information in as concise a format as possible, get the key points into that document, and then provide the links, the connections to the external guidance that is needed for particular countries or particular kinds of restoration. And there's a tremendous amount of guidance that's out there in the world, from sector-based guidance for different kinds of species or different habitats, from mining restoration to kelp forests or coral reefs. And so there's a tremendous amount out there, but it's too much for everyone to try and wade through and find on their own. It's also inefficient. So we're trying to make the process more efficient. And then the other aspect is that we want to make it as easy as possible for countries to be able to update and upgrade their NBSAPs to bring in the full meaning of Target 2.
Mountain tourism is a type of tourism activity which takes place in a defined and limited geographical space, such as hills or mountains with distinctive characteristics and attributes that are inherent to a specific landscape, topography, climate, diversity, flora and fauna, and local community. It encompasses a broad range of outdoor leisure and sports activities. Mountain tourism has a high potential to stimulate local economic growth and social change because of its complementary with other economic activities. Its contribution to GDP and job creation and its capacity to promote the dispersal of demand in time flight easily and go a longer, wider territory. Today, we are commemorating National App Day in US. Whether you want to take a selfie for the gram, tweet through your thoughts, or keep your favorite muscles at your fingertips, celebrate the marvelous worlds of apps on National App Day on December 11th. Not only do apps make life easier, but they also have created a huge number of employment opportunities for developers, social media warriors, and of course, influencers. It seems wild now to think that there was a life without apps, and the fact that they haven't been around for too long is even more unbelievable, considering their promise in today's society. Although computers are equipped with apps, people primarily use them on mobile devices and tablets. Today, even basic phone functions like sending a text message or making a call are done through apps. There were only about 500 apps when the App Store was launched originally, meaning it's difficult to identify the official first app ever to be released. Nevertheless, as more and more smartphones were unveiled, various app clients were also launched. These include Google Play for Android, BlackBerry's App World, and Amazon's App Store. With app downloads reaching more than 175 billion in the year 2017. CJ Thompson, founder of the middle marketing agency Platinum Edge Media, created National App Day. The day is celebrated on December 11th and promotes the collective culture of apps and innovation. From switching the lights off to playing your favorite music. Apps have changed the lives for the better. The day celebrates all these wonderful apps in our lives as well as developer teams behind them. Facebook reigns as the most downloadable app of all time. On the Apple App Store, over 60% of apps have never been downloaded, a whole world of undiscovered apps. A recent study showed that people prefer apps over websites, loads to play with one on the Play Store. Google Play Store has the highest number of apps available, over 2.8 million. China has banned mainstream social apps like Facebook and WhatsApp and instead has its own versions, Weibo and Reddit. Today is commemorated as Noodle Ring Day in US. The day recognizes recipes. Pasta is made into a delicious round casserole. Noodle rings are perfect for enjoying, from delicious pasta salad to quite complex baked pasta dishes. Limited only by your budget and adventurous spirit and creative nature. So the day is best known for celebrating the pasta dish formed in 8 or 9-inch ring mold or bundt pan. For many, making noodle ring meals will bring back memories of bygone times in which bundt pan was used to make anything from salads and cakes to pasta. The joy of these fond reminders of loved ones, great meals, and good times could revive the dish to its former glory. Noodles generally contain salt added to develop the softer protein and help bind the dough, while pasta is mostly salt-free. This means noodles are cooked without need for extra salt. Noodles were traditionally served in hot or cold seasonal broth, while pasta had a sauce added. One can prepare pasta in just about every style as a ring noodle, from your favorite lasagna to pasta salad and creamy pasta dishes. Work well in this format. Pasta is prepared by boiling them, but in the ring noodles recipe, the pasta is baked. This gives it a different texture as the noodles are cooked in the juices of ingredients added, making it very flavorful. The original noodles in China were prepared with millet, a cereal grown in warm regions, and are small seeds used to make flour. If you have ramen all your meals, you would have only be spending $140 a year. Instant ramen noodles were the first noodles that were consumed in space. The Yokomo Cup Noodles Museum is an interactive museum dedicated to ramen and its role in the global diet. Although it is frowned up in the Western society, it is considered an appreciation for your meal to slap your noodles in Japan. Today is also commemorated as Holiday Food Drive for Needy Animals in US. The day commemorates vulnerable animals worldwide and thanks those who volunteer to help them in their time of distress. People from all walks of life pool their resources, organize food donations to local animal shelters, and participate in volunteer activities to help needy animals. Not all furry four-legged creatures get the love and attention of our pets. receive. Millions of cats, dogs, and other companion animals are homeless, starving, or suffering from untreated medical conditions. Animal welfare is by no means a recent concept in human history. Philosophers like Aristotle believed that domestic animals were born with a purpose, and we should appreciate their social and economical contributions to humankind. Established movements for animal protection in the modern world appeared in the early 18th and 19th centuries, beginning the bills against animal cruelty in countries like UK and the US. The 1970s marked the birth of animal rights movement after Australian philosopher Peter Singer wrote Animal Liberation. Singer's book sparked a debate about the ethical treatment of animals in the modern world. In 1980, the People for Ethical Treatment of Animals, PETA, was formed in Maryland, US. The organization's goal was to show Americans how easy it was to transit to a vegan lifestyle and to produce cruelty-free shopping habits. PETA employed traditional measures to push its agenda, including using fake blood, body paint, and other theoretical devices that often courted controversy. By the late 1990s, the animal rights movement was no longer on the fringes of society. Lawyers, doctors, and various academicians joined the conversation. Animal lovers started a holiday food drive for the Needy Animals Day to help these shelters receive aid through pet pantries and donation drives. Today is also commemorated as Burkina Faso Republic Day in Burkina Faso, celebrated on December 11th every year, formerly known as Upper Volta, gained emancipation from centuries of tyrannical rule in 1958. The observation of Burkina Faso Republic Day is a day of celebration throughout the country. Several marches, manifestations, Day is also commemorated as anniversary of the statue of Westminster, Canada. Canadians still go to work and it is pretty much ordinary day for them. It's a nod to Canadian independence. The Union Jack, where logistics allow, is flown along with the maple leaf on federal buildings, airports, military bases from dawn to dusk to mark this day. Commemorates British law that was passed on 11 December 1931 It was Canada's final achievement of independence from Britain. The Statute of Westminster gave Canada and other Commonwealth dominions legal equality with Britain. These countries now had full legal freedom, except in the areas where they choose to salute also defined powers of Canadian Parliament and those of the Order of Dominions. The day is mostly celebrated in Canada. Around the world, December 11th is commemorated as UNICEF birthday. Commemorating the day, the charity was created in 1946. UNICEF for the United Nations or the United Nations Children Fund was initially created to provide emergency food and health care to children and mothers in countries that had been devastated by World War II. Now, the reputable and trustworthy charity has helped save more UNICEF for the United Nations Children Fund is an agency that is part of the United Nations, which is responsible for providing humanitarian and developmental aid to children across the globe. The agency is one of the most extensive and distinguished social welfare organizations in the world, with a presence in 192 countries and territories. UNICEF is the beneficiary of the International Child Emergency Fund, which International Children's Emergency Fund, ICEF, which was created by the UN Relief Rehabilitation Administration in 1946 to provide children and mothers affected by the World War II with immediate aid. In that same year, the UN generated UNICEF relies entirely on the contributions from governments and private donors. In 2019, UNICEF's 137 government partners, along with intergovernmental organizations and interorganizational arrangements, contributed $4.7 billion. The charity organization consists of government representatives that have never been appointed by United Nations Economic and Social Council, generally for 3 year terms. 36 members of the executive board establish policies, approve programs, and oversee administration and financial plans. UNICEF has and continues to contribute to greatly humanitarian cases around the world. In 2018, it assisted in the birth of 27 million babies, administered pentavalent vaccines to all estimated 65.5 million children, provided education for 12 million children, treated 4 million children with severe acute So UNICEF has helped save more children lives than any other humanitarian organization, 90 millions. Since 1990, UNICEF is the world's largest provider of ready-to-use therapeutic food, a high-protein paste that can bring a malnourished child back to health within weeks. UNICEF immunizes nearly 40% of the world's children. Globally, UNICEF is the largest buyer of mosquito nets, which can be used to protect children from harmful insect bites. According to UNICEF, human trafficking has been reported in all 50 US states, and highest rates reported in California, Florida, New York, Ohio, and Texas. These are statistics reported by UNICEF in one of their Fast Facts publications. UNICEF birthday is even a greater reminder to give you more and help children in need wherever, whenever we can, whether it's education, helping to give them more opportunities to girls around the globe, sanitation, food. With this, we shall conclude today's commemorations. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on today's session. See you all tomorrow at the same time, the same link with different commemorations. The feedback form has been shared in the form of polls. We request everyone to quickly fill up the feedback form and submit it before you leave the platform. So thank you once again, everyone. Take care. Good night.